Representative Bennett, you're recognized for 10 minutes closing debate in favor of House Bill 1940.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I was going to keep this really short, but I can't help myself and answer some of the stuff that's brought up. And I got to tell you that most of it was way off key. But for my Christian brothers from the other aisle, I just want to explain one thing. If you read 2 Kings about the story of Elijah, and I'll say this as short as possible, summarize as short as possible. On Mount Carmel, the story of Elijah was, they were saying, well, you don't have a real God. Our God is the real God, Baal. And he said, no, my God's the real God. And Elijah tells him, he goes, okay, let's settle this once and for all. I'll kill 2 cows. I'll give you one. I'll keep one. We'll build a fire or build wood around it. And you call your God to strike your cow on fire or your wood on fire. And I'll call mine. Matter of fact, you got more supporters and followers. You believe in your God. You go first. And according to the Bible, they went from morning to around afternoon or sometime. I'm not sure the exact time. And they prayed and they danced. And part of their religion was to cut themselves and do other things. And it didn't work. And at one time, Elijah even mocked him. He says, where's your God now? Maybe you should pray louder so he can hear you. It never came. And finally, Elijah says, it's my turn. Elijah prays to God and says, God, you're the most powerful God, my God, the one and true God. Strike it on fire. But before Elijah did that, to show his faith in his God, our God, the true God, he had him pour water all the way around it. All the way around it. They put water on everything. And he prayed to God, and God, you know what? The one true God set it on fire. What's the moral of that story? What is he saying? God will take care of the false idols and false gods that are out there. He'll do that. And he uses us as a vehicle to prove that he will do that. But you know what? We're getting way off key. This isn't so much about the one and true God, Jesus, or the Muslims, or the Buddhists, or the atheists so much as it is our First Amendment rights. We have the right to religious freedom, period. The Declaration of Independence refers to God 4 times. In public schools, children can hardly refer to God 1 time without being worried about being sent to the principal's office. Religious expression is being treated as a second-class speech in many of our public schools. The First Amendment doesn't turn schools into an anti-religion zone, nor teachers into prayer police, nor religious students into enemies of the state. Rather, schools are required to ensure neutrality, treating students' voluntary religious expression the same as all other expression. This bill settles that issue once and for all. Let me give you just a few examples of some of the stuff going around the United States right now. I'll use Texas as an example because this is where I got most of the language because it's held up in court. A Texas superintendent announcing to the students that if they prayed, they would be disciplined the same as if they had cursed. The school then published speaking guidelines that said prayers, blessings, invocations, and any reference to a deity are prohibited. A lawsuit ensued. A final judgment was entered against the school district, and that was Ward versus Santa Fe. In another public school, students were reprimanded for talking about Jesus during Easter. One school banned children from wishing deployed troops a Merry Christmas. Unbelievable. In another public school, a teacher trashed 2 Bibles belonging to students. She took the students to the principal and threatened to call Child Protective Services on the parents for letting their children carry Bibles to school. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Since children don't know the constitutional rights and really don't have the money to pursue those rights, and even if they did, most events, no doubt, will still go unreported. While all these examples deal with the Judeo-Christian discrimination, there's no doubt this is happening to all religions in all of our schools. In each instance, not only were students' rights violated, but the school entangled itself in expensive litigation. And I heard that brought up a while ago. And the taxpayers ultimately had to pay for that. In Ward versus Santa Fe, for instance, when judgment was entered against the school had to pay the child's attorney's fees of over $50,000, as well as their own attorney's fees for over $250,000. This bill, House Bill 1940, solves that problem. It covers it. This bill accomplishes 3 things, and I want to make this very clear to everyone. First, it codifies Supreme Court precedents into an accessible and understandable law. This bill has following provisions and uses the Supreme Court's own language. Good News Club versus Milford Central School, Cornelius versus NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. It goes on and on and on. There was over 10 separate court cases that's codified in this legislation. Let me give you an example of how this bill is going to work. Under this bill, if the topic for a student speaker is safety and sportsmanship, and one student says, "Let us have a safe game tonight," and another student says, "God, let us have a safe game tonight," since both expressions were on topic, both should be treated equally. I could go on and on and on explaining all this stuff. Second, the bill puts in safeguards to ensure that a student's voluntary religious viewpoint, if any, will not be attributable to the school or mistaken as firmly sponsored by the school. Thus, these are requirements of limited public forums for student speakers, selection of speakers based on neutral criteria, and disclaimers to be read and printed. Third, the bill provides schools with an optional safe harbor model policy that school districts can choose to adopt to bring themselves into compliance with the law and provide neutral procedures for having student speakers at school events and graduations, and deal with matters of religious expression in homework, school clubs, and other activities. This bill does not require or even suggest that any student should ever express a religious viewpoint. It just protects them if they do. Period. This bill represents true grassroots legislation. Whether Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. It's our children's religious liberties should bring us all together in one united voice. And I'll finish with this. To anyone who would vote against this bill, the millions of children in Oklahoma public schools would probably ask you this: which of us do you not want to protect from religious viewpoint discrimination? Is it the Muslim children, the Christian children, the Jewish children? Which children do you think deserve religious discrimination in our public schools? For all these reasons, I ask that you do the right thing and vote yes on House Bill 1940.